Okay, ladies, before we go into the sanctuary, as an usher, I do have to give you a couple of rules of thumb regarding appropriate church behavior. Now come on down to the Ebenezer Baptist Church. We're going to have to stay in the vestibule here so that we can go over church etiquette. Obviously, there is no gum in the sanctuary, okay? That's really obvious. It's almost like school back in the day. But what I want to really point out to you is the culture of ushering within the African American church. It is very, very important. Decorum and codes of conduct, how to behave, how to conduct yourself were very important in the church, and that served as a training ground for society. And that as African Americans, sometimes if we break a rule or if we do anything outside of the norm, the consequences for us could be more severe. So the church was the perfect training ground to practice appropriate behaviors. For instance, in the church, if the pastor is preaching or if there's an altar call, you may not enter the church until that is done. Also, there are various hand signals that I would use to communicate with my fellow ushers. When I stand in church, if I'm not holding my fans or my Kleenex for our parishioners who just may have gotten happy, I stand at attention with my hand behind my back, very attentive at all times. So in general, think of me as the assistant principal at the church. Okay? So y'all come on down to the sanctuary. Welcome inside the Ebenezer Baptist Church. The church in general has a very important role in African American history. As you know, the church became a place where we used to meet, plan, strategize. It might have been an NAACP meeting, or it may have been a SNCC meeting, various other meetings to plan how we were going to react to the social, economic, political woes that our people faced at that time. How could we do this in silence or in private among a group of people whom we could trust? Therefore, the church served as the location. So the Black church is the background of the civil rights movement. Again, it is where a lot of planning took place. Now, most people know that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, he did his trial sermon at the Ebenezer Baptist Church. He was a pastor there. His father was also a pastor there. Presently, Raphael Warnock, who is the first African American to be elected senator of the state of Georgia, he is an associate pastor presently at the Ebenezer Baptist Church. Representative John Lewis was also a member of the Ebenezer Baptist Church. So this church, just one, holds grand significance in African American history. There were other reverends outside of Martin Luther King who were very fundamental and important in the movement. For example, Reverend Ralph Abernathy, who was very close to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. They established and created the Southern Christian Leadership Conference together. There are again many reverends who were at the forefront of the civil rights movement. Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, he was a minister. He was beaten also within an inch of his life, just like John Lewis was. He also remained very persistent in his fight against injustice. And he is lesser known, but he's quite an important figure as well. And as I told you, because the church was a place of planning, it became a place where African American people began to strategize this stony road and this plight for freedom and justice that we're still trying to fight. That made the church a target from various white supremacist groups. We all know that the 4 girls, one was age 11 and the other 3 age 14, they were killed in a church bombing. But one thing what many people do not understand is that the 60s did not mark the end of church bombings. More than 30 black churches were burned in an 18-month period between 1995 and 1996. And this led Congress to pass the Church Arson Prevention Act. Many people do not know that. And here is a chart, a timeline that chronicles church bombings in the United States from 1961 all the way down to 1996. And acts of violence have not been eradicated from African American churches. If you come over here, who can forget Dylan Storm Roof in 2005 in Charleston, South Carolina, when he murdered those innocent parishioners who were there at a Bible study? They so warmly and so openly welcomed him in. However, he had sinister motives. So we have to think about what is going on, that the church still remains a target all the way from the 60s to 2005. Okay? But please understand, without the church, the civil rights movement would have been different. It would have been stalled. This was a planning location for many movements that helped our people. So I'm going to take you for a moment. We're going to leave Georgia and we're going to come on down to Greensboro, North Carolina at the Woolworth's counter. Now, this was a very famous sit-in movement, but what I want you to understand is it was not adults or older people at the forefront of this movement. These were younger people. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was responsible for coordinating these various sit-in protests, among other protests, but this is student nonviolent. So as principals, what implication does that mean for you? First of all, for your teachers, they need to set high expectations for all of their students, because these students did what? They went out and changed the world in a way that we all benefit from presently. So we need to have high expectations for all of our students, for all of our stakeholders, because sometimes we don't know what they can accomplish until it is expected of them. Okay? Also, we have Jim Crow, and this is something I really want to put into your hands. Now, here I have a picture of a sign from Jim Crow, segregation, saying or indicating that this pool was for white swimmers only. I want you to know that these are not toys. These are the actual signs that were taken down. Y'all are old enough to remember when the Berlin Wall came down and people wanted a piece of it. So when these signs came down in the midst of integration, people begin to collect them and keep them. And I want you to feel the cold, this iron, the permeates. These are aging so well. These signs are older than all of us, but look at how well preserved they are. Symbolic of the sentiment of segregation. It was designed to be well preserved. However, because of the sacrifices of people who we see featured on this board and in this museum, these signs came down. But to actually hold that, it speaks a lot about the intent behind segregation. Okay? And even if you look at the colors of this display, it was specifically done in black and white for a reason to further symbolize segregation. Now, we all know about Rosa Parks and the great deed that she did when she refused to give up her seat that day. But I want you to know that is something that was already pre-planned at one of the area churches. She was the right person. She was an upstanding model citizen, great reputation. So the symbolism is this is an unacceptable institution that would take a wonderful woman like this respectable, upstanding citizen and throw her in jail based on where she is sitting on a bus. This Rosa Parks doing this act was very, very purposeful and very, very strategic. Now, I mentioned Rosa Parks, but I want to also mention Miss Joanne Robinson. Miss Joanne Robinson was an English professor at Alabama State College and the president of the Women's Political Society of Montgomery, Alabama, and she was an activist for professional Black women such as yourselves. We have to think about the time, regardless of one being Black or white. Women in general were less educated as a group, very domestic homemakers. So she is the one who first championed the plight of the professional Black woman. So what can you take from this museum up to this point? As a principal, whether you're a person of color or not, this still sets the example that you can overcome any obstacle. You can as a principal. You may have a school, all of the teachers have left. It's hard to find good teachers. There will be several problems that you encounter on a daily basis as a principal. But if that gentleman whose face was on the front of that slave shanty, if he can endure those circumstances, surely you can endure the circumstances that you encounter every day as a school leader. Surely your teachers can make a difference in the lives of the children that they see. And this museum helps educators see students in a different light. Whether you are Black, whether you're white, Native American, it doesn't matter, because life is going to give you an obstacle. It's going to give you something to overcome. Your white students have something to overcome. Your white teachers have something to overcome. But this museum tells us that you can lead a school to greatness regardless of the conditions. Okay, you must have the willpower, the mindset, the drive, and the focus. Okay, thank you so much. From this point on, Mr. Jared Payton will take you to Harlem. Thank you. You're welcome.
How you doing?